as it relates to what's
How
happening.
much money do you think it'll cost
Costs
to
are
bribe the American people enough to make them drive electric cars, to move those numbers?
Electrification's increasing as it relates to cost. Only a fraction of currently eligible
much do you
vehicles
think
are
it'll
eligible
cost?
for the federal tax credit. So
How much do you think it'll cost, David?
Senator, I think I quoted earlier
I'm
that,
calling on you, sir.
Apologies.
How much do you think it'll cost?
it ultimately depends on
You
consumer
don't know,
adoption.
do you?
We don't have an exact figure.
You think
no,
we ought
Senator.
to just keep throwing money at it until we hit the jackpot? How about you, Mr. Davis?
Eventually, if you put enough charging stations there to solve for range anxiety, because the reason I didn't buy one is because I may have to drive 450 miles
What
to
do you
East
think
Tennessee
it'll
at square one.
cost the American taxpayer for us to convince the American people, frankly, bribe the American people to get rid of the gas car and drive an electric car? Can any of you give me a figure?
Senator, the Treasury Department reports we spent about $1 billion year to date. So for the first half of this year, so roughly $2 billion this
Well,
year.
we're behind.
As I noted,
How much do you think it'll cost, Doctor? You're a doctor,
so
right?
$2 billion this year is what the estimate from the Treasury
Okay,
Department.
How much do you think it will cost for us to, let's say, get 75% of these 200?
How much will it cost American consumers to remain?
How much, do you know how much it'll cost, Doctor?
No one knows the future with certainty, Senator.
Right, you just think we ought to keep throwing money at it until we hit the jackpot.
I think
Is
we
that
ought to
right?
set a
Okay, did you just see that? Because I need you to stay right here with me. We are about to watch this full video together, and I have a lot to say. That was Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana, in one of the most refreshingly honest moments I have seen come out of a Senate hearing in a long time. The man sat down and immediately asked the question that millions of ordinary Americans have been thinking, but nobody in that room wanted to answer. If electric cars are so great, why do we have to pay people to drive them? Simple. Devastating. And nobody, not one of those 5 witnesses, could give him a straight answer. Now, before anybody comes into my comments calling me anti-environment or anti-progress, just hold on. This is not about hating electric cars. This is about accountability. This is about who is actually in that room speaking for the average American and who is speaking at them. From what I just saw, Senator Kennedy was the only one doing the former. So we're going to watch this full video, break it all down, and I will give you my honest take on every single moment. If you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now. This channel is where we slow down the moments the mainstream conversation tries to rush past. Like and subscribe, let's get into it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome to all our witnesses. I'm sorry I was late. I was in another committee. How many of you drive an electric car, own an electric car? Okay. You gentlemen don't?
If you mean electric by a battery electric, no. If you mean plug-in electric, yes.
Okay. Of the 3 folks who raised their hands, how many do you own gasoline-powered cars at all? No?
No, Senator.
No, all electric. Okay. Let me ask you all this, and please give me brief answers, because there are 5 of you, there's only 1 of me. Okay? If electric cars are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
The upfront costs of an electric vehicle are about $10,000 higher today than they are for an equivalent internal combustion
they're more
engine vehicle
expensive. Anything
today,
else?
but that cost is declining substantially.
Right.
And so this is a temporary intervention to help the auto industry strategically compete in global markets and to transition as
You
battery
didn't
costs
hear
fall.
my admonition, okay?
Sorry.
Doc, how about, if electric vehicles are so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
I think sorry, Senator, I'll step
I'm
away
sorry,
from.
I can't see the names.
Oh, it's Gross, Ms. Gross here. I'll defer to not comment on policy questions about incentives and so on. Maybe
Tell
pass
me
it
your
off to
name. I
Ms.
can't
Hinman.
see your name tag.
Gross? I can switch.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I can swivel it.
I apologize. Would you start over?
I was just going to say I'd like to defer on policy grounds, not to talk about policy incentives and so on, defer over to my
Why not?
colleague here, Ms. Hinman.
You don't believe in electric cars?
Oh, totally support electric vehicles and drive 3 of them myself.
So if they're so swell, how come we're having to pay people to drive them?
So just speaking personally then, not representing my company at this point.
Sure.
Speaking personally.
Who's your company?
EPRI, the Electric Power Research Institute.
Oh, okay.
And I have to be careful about policy, stepping into, wading too deeply into policy as an independent leader here. But when we think about, again, I just want to ditto what Dr. Jenkins said. This is an effort to compete
Yes, ma'am, I
globally.
know all that, but how, if they're so swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
Well, maybe then the quick answer for me is I didn't take advantage of incentives, but I also bought used vehicles on the market. I love it. They're wonderful to drive. And so on.
Okay.
Senator, similar for myself. We
What's your
purchased Maureen Hinman.
Damn,
My hair's longer in my picture. Sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't even know who I'm talking to. Go ahead, Ms. Hinman.
I did want to follow up with my colleague, Ms. Gross. I purchased my first EV, fully
Yes,
electric.
ma'am, but
in
if they're so
2015.
swell, how come we have to pay people to drive them?
Well, I purchased, I can only speak for myself, but we purchased our first vehicle in 2015 because it was easier to charge, cheaper to drive. It drives better, faster, smoother. There's no muck on the bottom of our garage. And frankly, when I had my first child, some of the safety features were just better.
But here's what I'm sorry, you're not answering my question. How many vehicles, how many cars do we have in the United States?
280.
This lady right here, in the middle. I'm sorry, if I could see your name, I wouldn't just point to you.
If I could, I'd like to defer to my colleague who
Well, I'd
has
like to hear
better.
your answer, okay?
How many calls?
How many cars are there?
295 million?
Okay, and what percentage are electric vehicles?
1.6.
Okay, hold up that chart. Here's where all the electric vehicles are. California loves them. The West Coast loves them. Everybody else is kind of lukewarm. Okay, and I'm trying to understand why. But let me move on to this. Let me ask these two gentlemen. I think the reason is because they're more expensive. And people, when they drive a car, like it to run. And when it runs out of electricity, it stops. And they can't find a place to charge them. So let me ask these two gentlemen. I don't want to be unfair. So it's clear we got a long way to go. We got 283 million cars in America, and we got 3.3 million electric vehicles. We got a long way to go. And at least these three folks think that we need to take taxpayer money and give enough money to American people so they'll walk away from gas cars and drive electric vehicles. How much is that going to cost? I'm going to ask them in a second if I have time. But how much do you think it will cost for us to basically bribe every American to drive an electric car?
Well, Senator, excuse me, Dave Sweeter with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. I would just underscore your original question with this. There's really two things at play as it relates to what's
How much
happening.
money do you think it'll cost
Costs
to
are
bribe the American people enough to make them drive electric cars, to move those numbers?
electrification's increasing as it relates to cost. Only a fraction of currently eligible
much do you
vehicles
think
are
it'll
eligible
cost?
for the federal tax credit. So
How much do you think it'll cost, David?
Senator, I think I quoted earlier
I'm
that
calling on you, sir.
Apologies.
How much do you think it'll cost?
it ultimately depends on
You
consumer
don't know,
adoption.
do you?
We don't have an exact figure.
You
no,
think we ought
Senator.
to just keep throwing money at it until we hit the jackpot? How about you, Mr. Davis?
Eventually, if you put enough charging stations there to solve for range anxiety, because the reason I didn't buy one is because I may have to drive 450
How
miles
much
to
do you
East
think
Tennessee
it'll
at spur of the moment.
cost the American taxpayer for us to convince the American people, frankly, bribe the American people to get rid of the gas car and drive an electric car? Can any of you give me a figure?
Yes, Senator, the Treasury Department reports we spent about $1 billion year to date. So for the first half of this year, so roughly $2 billion this
Well,
year.
we're behind.
As I noted,
How much do you think it'll cost, Doctor? You're a doctor,
so
right?
$2 billion this year is what the estimate from the Treasury
Okay,
Department.
How much do you think it will cost for us to, let's say, get 75% of these 200.
How much will it cost American consumers to remain?
How much, do you know how much it'll cost, Doctor?
No one knows the future with certainty, Senator.
Right, you just think we ought to keep throwing money at it until we hit the jackpot.
I think
Is
we
that
ought to
right?
set a stable policy framework that allows American consumers to become familiar with the environment and American businesses to innovate and to compete within that stable framework. That's what I said
And how
earlier in
much
my
will that
testimony.
cost?
Will cost less than the benefits delivered by
I
the
don't
policy.
care how much it costs, do you?
I care if the benefits exceed the costs. I don't care about the costs.
You
These are
don't care how
investments
much
in the
it
public.
costs, do you?
I care very much how much it costs. As long as the benefits exceed the costs, that's an investment worth making.
Well, so, okay.
How much
So
does it cost to seed the industries of the future to China?
I get to ask the questions, Doc.
Sorry.
You're at Princeton, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. How are Jewish students doing at Princeton? Are they feeling better?
No, that has
more
nothing to do with the hearing today. I'm
I
not going
didn't
to
think
comment on
you'd
that.
I didn't think you'd want to talk about that. Do any of you have any idea how much it would cost to
Senator,
get, say, 75% of the American people
Senator,
driving electric cars?
if I could, your question is fair. One answer to it is the cost of inaction of the U.S. not competing is far greater than any incentive on the front
Okay,
end.
quantify that for me. Oh, man, I'm way over. I'm sorry, Sheldon. Quantify that for me, because here's my,
Once you wrap up with this, because I think
I will.
everybody's had a chance to try to
will.
answer your question, and
here's
you're
my
repeating
problem.
it at this
Okay,
point.
we all want clean air, we all want bright water, we all want to eat, and we all want to live indoors. Okay? But there are trade-offs in all of this. Despite what the Princeton professor thinks, we don't have unlimited money. This is not Princeton. So we have to decide the cost and the benefits. And nobody seems to be able to quantify the costs. They just say, keep throwing money at it, throwing money at it, throwing money at it. And nobody can really quantify the benefits, except if we don't do it, then we're all going to die. And when I go back to my people and say, your electricity costs have gone up 30%, but it's for a good cause. Why, Kennedy? Because you're going to die if we don't do it. Why, Kennedy? Because a professor at Princeton says so. That doesn't work for most Americans. Can you answer that for me? You see my frustration. I love driving an electric car. I think they're really cool. But the median household income in my state's $55,000. Our Princeton professor probably makes that in a week. Okay? They don't care what they think at Princeton. Can you answer that for me, guys?
I can't answer how much it's going
Good.
to cost, but I can tell you that just last year alone, China in the EV market subsidized it by $12.4 billion, and that's their annual spend. It's more than, even with in our best year, it's more than
And
two-thirds of the
China's
United
doing
States
great,
spends.
but let me ask you a question. How much will it cost China to become carbon neutral by 2050?
I am very concerned, well, they won't, but I'm more concerned about the
How much
risk
would it
to the
cost
U.S.
them?
economy of
How
losing
much
the
would
auto
it-
manufacturing
How much would it
industry.
cost them? Do you know? See, nobody talks about the cost. I'll tell you how much it'll cost them. It'll cost them $1 trillion a year, starting today, to be carbon neutral by 2050. You know how much it'll cost Russia? $250 billion a year, 3 times what their defense budget. Now, if you believe that Vladimir Putin is going to spend $250 billion for climate change, then you'll never own your own home. So we go spend all this money, which y'all can't quantify. We just keep spending. They don't spend the money. They're at an advantage, and you know how much world temperatures are lowered? None. Zero, zilch, nada. And I can't believe our chairman hadn't cut me off. But I am done.
Now's your moment. Thank
I
you,
am
Senator
done.
Kennedy, for your enthusiastic participation.
All right. We just watched the whole thing, and honestly, it landed even harder the second time. Senator Kennedy is doing something genuinely rare in that hearing room. He is not performing outrage for the cameras. He is sitting there representing the actual lived reality of the people who sent him to Washington, and he is refusing to let a room full of experts get away with non-answers. And they gave him a lot of non-answers. He asked one straightforward question multiple times. How much is this going to cost? Not a trick question. Not a gotcha. Just how much? These are people who work in energy policy, automotive innovation, electric power research. If anyone should be able to answer that, it is them. But every single time we got the same thing. It depends on consumer adoption. The benefits will exceed the costs. Nobody can predict the future. That is not an answer. That is a dodge dressed up in professional language. And Kennedy called it exactly what it was. Are we just going to keep throwing money at this until we hit the jackpot? And honestly, what else do you call it when you cannot name a number, cannot set a ceiling, and cannot define what success looks like? That is not a policy. That is a blank check. Here is the part that really got me, though. He brought up the median household income in Louisiana, $55,000 a year, and pointed out that the Princeton professor on that panel probably makes that in a week. That moment right there is why this video gets shared. Kennedy is not speaking in abstractions. He is speaking in grocery bills and electricity costs that have already gone up for working families. He is speaking for the person who cannot absorb a $10,000 premium on a new vehicle just because Washington decided it is the right direction for the country. And the response from the other side of the table? China is spending $12 billion on EV subsidies, so we have to compete. Look, that is a fair point in isolation. Losing the auto manufacturing industry to China would be a serious problem. I will give them that. But Kennedy's counter is also completely valid. If China and Russia are not committing to carbon neutrality and nobody at that table can tell you how much American spending actually moves the needle on global temperatures, what exactly are we buying with all this money? He put it plainly. You cannot build an effective global climate strategy on the assumption that your geopolitical rivals are going to play along. And the moment that really crystallized everything for me was near the end. Kennedy said we all want clean air, clean water, we all want to eat and live indoors. Nobody is disputing the goal. What he is disputing is spending without accountability, justifying it with doomsday language, and expecting working Americans to just trust the process. Because when he goes back home and tells his constituents their electricity bills went up 30%, and the answer is a professor at Princeton says it is necessary, that does not land. It has never landed. And politicians who pretend otherwise are exactly why people feel like Washington stopped working for them. To be fair, some witnesses made reasonable points. The woman who drives 3 electric vehicles and bought them used without taking incentives, I respect that. The argument that EV upfront costs are declining, and this is a transitional period, that is grounded in something real. I am not saying the pro-EV side has nothing. I am saying they came to a Senate hearing completely unprepared to answer the most basic fiscal question possible, and that is a serious problem. Kennedy was not asking them to solve climate change in 10 minutes. He was asking them to be honest about the price tag, and they could not do it. He walked in representing people who fill up with regular gas, who drive long distances because that is just life where they live, who cannot relate to a West Coast EV bubble, and who deserve a straight answer when their tax dollars are on the table. He asked for accountability. He asked for numbers. He asked for honesty. What he got was a masterclass in saying a lot while answering very little. If this video made you think, drop a comment below. Are you pro-EV? Do you think Kennedy is missing the bigger picture? Or do you think he was the only adult in the room? Let's talk about it. Share this if you think more people need to see it, and I will see you in the next one.